Brilliant. I think we may as well get going with a huge turnout. Good to see. We are very short for time today during the lunchtime plenary. You have come to the best event of the conference, the Campus Youth Lunchtime Plenary, with a star-studded panel of speakers that we have here. We're short of time, so I'm going to say to the speakers 2 minutes. Speakers, I will cut you off after a couple of minutes, so don't consider me rude. Someone famous once said that no man would listen to you talk if he didn't know it was his turn next. Anyway, so please bear that in mind when you are speaking away. A very quick introduction to the speakers that we have today. First of all, Liam Burns. Liam is the recently elected president of the National Union of Students. Actually, I did a bit of research on Liam and found that Adam, his co-panelist, had written an article about him, a really glowing article, in which he described Liam as a check-shirted geek with social skills. I think that was him trying to give you a compliment there.
The first half's true, the second one's just being nice, I think.
Well, he also said that you had the gentle charm of a fifer as well.
Good. Does anyone actually know what the gentle charm of a fifer would look like?
We look forward to finding out, I think. That brings me on to Adam Ramsay. Adam here sitting on my left. He's a member of the Green Party, editor of the Bright Green blog. The Daily Mail did an expose of you, Adam, didn't they, recently? What did they say?
Well, I can't remember specific things other than that, in general, I was quite posh, and there was a photo of me having lunch, which apparently proved I was posh.
A posh lefty who lives in a castle, apparently, a Scottish castle. That's good start. We also have Ellie on my right here, who only found out she was speaking about 5 minutes ago. We like to do things in advance here at Campus Youth. Ellie is very heavily involved with UK Uncut, who, as I explained to my friends last night, they're the people who invaded Fortnum and Mason, and not a UK pornography group. We also have Tom Wood, sitting on the right here. He is the chair of Liberal Youth. And during your campaign, you actually set up a Facebook page to be the chair of Liberal Youth, didn't you? Where you were asked some very important questions of character, such as, can you count? And do you like ponies? Is that right? We look forward to hearing the politicians' answer, I think, on those.
I don't want to sound like I wasn't accountable to my voters, but I don't even remember those questions, so if I answered them, I'm terribly worried by what I might have said.
Well, do you like ponies?
I don't like ponies.
Okay, settle that.
Thank you.
I voted for you based on that. I can't believe it.
Just on our far right here, in terms of position, not politics, is Shiv Malik, Guardian journalist and author of The Jilted Generation, How Britain Bankrupted Its Youth. Born after September 1979, struggling to find a decent job, even though you're a graduate, can't afford to buy or even rent a house, no prospects. Welcome to the Jilted Generation. Shiv is your man. September 1979 is the official cut-off date for being part of the Jilted Generation. On the far left here, we have Lisa Nandy, born in August 1979, so officially not part of the Jilted Generation, I'm afraid, Lisa. But she is MP for Wigan, which is almost as good. So let's start with our first speaker on my left, Adam Ramsay.
Well, thank you for having me. And I think it's a crucial time for this conference because from the Russian border to the French Atlantic, the historic parties of the centre-left in Europe have been smashed. 3 years after the collapse of financial capitalism, the financial capitalists are back in charge. The rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer, and we're facing runaway climate change. And to an extent, we can blame the triangulation of our failed leaders, but we must also understand that the infrastructure of the left has failed. And I'm only young, but I'm fed up with losing. To be fair, it's been hard. From the mid-1970s, we've had structural unemployment, we've had massive assaults on trade unions, and that's meant trade union organising has been very difficult. In the States, the response to that has been to learn from Saul Alinsky and to invest in community organising. In Britain, we saw a different thing. Our parents, the baby boomers, were the beneficiaries of a mass expansion of higher education, and they got their politics very much from the New Left, and they built new organisations, Friends of the Earth, Amnesty International, Greenpeace, the World Development Movement. But our generation of organisers faces further struggles. Further deregulation of labour markets have forced us to work harder. Successes in women's liberation have near doubled the monetised workforce, but shifted a huge amount of our leisure time into work. So the average dinner time has moved from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., and the number and strength of community groups has dropped rapidly. But on the other hand, we've benefited from another mass expansion in higher education and from new technologies which allow us to challenge power in a whole new set of ways. And we've started to learn to organise ourselves. So if you're an activist of my age, then you left school as Baghdad was bombed. You marched as a student to make poverty history, and then you graduated in the middle of the credit crunch. Our interventions have been fleet of foot and media savvy, Plain Stupid, then Climate Camp, then UK Uncut. We've had an energy to them which has attracted so much more attention than the ageing NGOs of our baby boomer parents. And they have forced some issues onto the political agenda. But are they enough? I don't think so, because ultimately the power of these actions has been their ability to communicate ideas through the media. And the left will never win a debate fought on the playing field of a corporate-owned media. By focusing so much on the media, we've mirrored Mandelson's New Labour machine. We have built political organisations without the membership of millions, which don't organise communities from house to house, from street to street, from town to town. We've retreated into sound bites and clever spin, and we are good at that, and we shouldn't stop doing it, but it's not enough. And it doesn't have to be this way. We don't have to depend solely on the 10-word headlines and clever spin. When Jimmy Reid led Glasgow's shipbuilders in their work-in and on strike, his comrades had long had access to workers' education programmes. You still meet old men in Clydeside who did gruelling shifts, often 12 hours a day, and then went in the evenings to the Working Men's Club to discuss Marx's Capital by candlelight. Where are the workers' education programmes of today? When we fight elections, we know that we must knock on doors. Finish, it says. When we fight elections, we know we've got to knock on doors, but who's doing the mass organising today? Who's knocking on doors and talking about cuts, talking about climate change? No one. And I think this work is urgent, and so I think we urgently need to look at the infrastructure of the left that our generation is going to have to build. Around the world, the left is winning in Latin America, in Southeast Asia, in Southern Africa. The IMF are being forced back, the force of neoliberalism forced back. We need to beat them here in Europe, and in order to do that, we need to build new structures and we need to work together. And so I look forward to working with you.
Thank you very much, Adam. Liam, your chance to respond to Adam's comments about you earlier.
And I'd prepare much speaking notes on that. Thanks very much for the invitation today. And it's a timely debate for us in NUS. It won't go unknown to this audience that it's been an interesting year for NUS when it comes to tactics and how we campaign. Some of that we've got right, some of that we got wrong. And different people have different opinions on where we did have success and where we should have done things differently. But it has forced us to rethink how we organise. For those that might not know, NUS by its very nature is highly structured. We have student associations and unions on the ground, and from the centre we ask them to do things. Now I think the premise of this debate is trying to suggest that that isn't necessarily where we are with the youth movement anymore. I won't be apologetic about that. We've achieved amazing things through our student unions. But nonetheless, we are having a debate internally about how we change how we do things. And I think what would be interesting to hear today from the audience is around 3 principles of how we operate outside of structures and outside of political parties. The first is on how we decide what we campaign on. For an organisation like NUS, our power comes from being able to focus a lot of campaigning and activity on an issue, a policy position. What one thing are we trying to change? It's becoming increasingly clear that that's not the way that local activists want to work. One of the powers of 38 Degrees, I think, is that actually it's millions of people across the UK who decide what it is 38 Degrees works on, and they give a level of ownership to what they do. And at the end of the day, that's only about email and electronic campaigning, and yet there feels a real grassroots connection to that because they've been part of the decision on what to campaign on. UK Uncut, that there's not a central organisation to it. It's very much a local concept where they decide what it is that they are going to campaign on, and it's contextualised to the local, both politics and geography of the situation. That's really hard for NUS because we're not used to doing that. We're not used to devolving what the issue is to the local level. And that's what we're trying to decide how we do in the best way we can as a national organisation. The second thing I think is important is geography. We are constantly obsessed. I say obsessed, I think it's right that we have national manifestations when we want to disagree with the things that the coalition government are doing, the things that we are seeing across the board locally. But they are happening locally. And far too often we feel more comfortable bringing people to one central location and one national manifestation, which, as I say, I think is important, but I don't think it should eat up all our resources. And so how we equip people to be able to campaign locally is going to become increasingly important. And again, something we're not great at. We're learning. There's an organisation in America called Wellstone who do a lot of simply training to create local campaigning activists who are there to empower others, not to deliver on their own. I think that's probably where the centre-left movement needs to look now. And it's some of the stuff that was touched on during the Labour leadership debate that I think we probably need to revisit very soon. The third thing that I think is important is politics. And it certainly won't be unknown to Compass that is fraught with problems. As soon as you start trying to be cross-party political divides, as soon as you start trying to bring people together under broad ideologies rather than a membership card, people start to become disenfranchised, people get territorial, and the campaign is undermined. And I think we've never really answered how we do that properly. So there are the things that NUS are looking at how we do better, and it'll be great to hear from the audience today of ideas how they think we take forward campaigners outside the traditional structures that we have.
Thank you very much, Liam. I'd like to hand over now to Lisa Nandy. Lisa, how can politicians work with the youth movement?
Well, I mean, I wanted to start by saying I don't want to overstate the problem in that, you know, in my job I see all the time young people, one of whom is in this room actually, who are incredibly involved in politics, both mainstream politics and also and broader issues. But there is a challenge for us, there's no question that I go around my constituency, I see all the time young people who are intensely political. The myth that this generation is not interested in politics, I think, has been well and truly busted over the last few months. But actually it was never true. But they're not represented in mainstream politics. And by mainstream politics, I particularly wanted to focus on party politics, because I think it's really important. Over the last few months, we've seen a focus on single issues, young people coming out, taking to the streets, lobbying Parliament on particular issues and on particular cuts. I think that's been fantastic, actually. The energy that has brought to Parliament has been absolutely brilliant. And actually, the most successful campaigns, apart from the campaign on the forests, have been the education maintenance allowance, tuition fees and the school sports partnerships, none of which were won, but all of which actually forced ministers into really significant concessions that will have a real impact on people's lives. But the problem is, if young people aren't involved in political parties are where decisions get made. Political parties still form governments. And yes, there's a declining number of people who vote, and I don't want to underestimate that. But 90% of support in elections still goes to the three main political parties from the people who actually turn out to vote. So it's really important that we have the energy and the fresh ideas and the dynamism reflected in our parties. But far too often what I see in political parties is several things. One is that it's very, very difficult for young people to feel that they can sign up to an entire party agenda. I mean, I've been a member of the Labour Party through Iraq, through faith schools, through tuition fees, all things that I profoundly disagree with, not just the pragmatic decisions that were taken, but actually the principles underlying them. And it is difficult to adjust and to compromise. One of the things the Labour Party is looking at is whether there can be a mechanism for having supporters of a broad line, a broad narrative for a party without people having to sign up to the whole agenda, but it is definitely problematic. The other is that I see far too often in my party and in others that young people, when they join, are just shunted into some youth officer position. You're the young person, you can go and be the youth officer, and we'll see you in 5 years when you're too old to do it. And I want to see young people brought into genuine, meaningful roles in the party. There is reason to hope about that. There are a vast number now of younger members of Parliament and councillors. In my area of Wigan, we're hoping to bring a few more through in the next year. And that is really important because young people have a lot more to offer than just simply talking about youth issues. The last thing I wanted to say is just this issue about a cross-party dialogue, that being in a political party should not in any sense stop you from working with people across the political divide. I will work with virtually anyone who can help me get things done for the people that I represent. That's what we're doing today, actually, at Compass.